All right, guys, episode 4 of the Rivian Report podcast.
Rivian Report.
Let's get into it. We got a lot to go over for the new year. By the way, anyone listening, Happy New Year.
Happy New
Going
Year.
into 2024. Big year for Rivian, hopefully. They've accomplished a lot in 2023, and there's no shortfall of news going into the new year from them with a few patents and a few different things to get into. I'm going to let Dan start it off with the first patent.
Okay, so first up, Rivian has filed a patent for a Tesla Powerwall competitor kind of a thing, a stationary storage, and that is something that I think is great. It shows that Rivian is looking at the future, and it's more than just producing cars, which is awesome. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. So we know Tesla has the Powerwall. We know that Elon believes that the energy business could eventually even be bigger than the auto business. And we know that most of his energy business has not been from solar. It's actually been from battery storage, that battery storage is extremely important. And Rivian looks like they want to get into that business. They released a patent published on December 28th, so right at the end of this year. It got published, and it's basically looking like a system to keep energy storage on your home. It's also going to be able to, I think, be able to take power in from even maybe their vehicles. They have like inverters, and it's not just the energy storage itself, but it's looks like a full system to power your house, work with solar panels, etc., which is going to be great, I think, getting into the energy business. They're showing that they're not going to be like Tesla. They're not going to be just a EV car company, but they're going to be a full electrifying the grid, electrifying the world, sustainable, different than just cars, different business, exactly. So that's really exciting when it comes to that. They also had another patent come out recently, which was interesting for the R1S, and that is on the spare tire on the back of the R1S. We're going to show a photo. Rivian Updates showed it's a new patent introducing a full-sized spare tire mount on the back of the R1S, and it has some utility built in. So it looks like a storage kind of area that can be replaced with different utility items like a cooler or a waste bin that can easily be accessed from the top. So as it kind of looks like in the patent. And it also will, I think, integrate into the software. They're showing like a photo on their screen inside the vehicle that you'll be able to, maybe if it's, I don't know, maybe change the temperature of the cooler. Who knows? Maybe it'll know when the waste bin's full. I don't know what it'll do, but it'll be interesting to see that they're thinking of more than just, just the vehicles. They're actually thinking of really great adventure accessories for the vehicles, right?
For sure, and I think that these little design choices, these little this minute details are what they're so on brand for Rivian. All this utility packed into something that most other automakers would just slap it on there. That's so on brand for Rivian. It's why people will end up choosing Rivian over competitors. So
yeah, I agree. It really
great.
Adds to the brand focus. Some news on their RAN network. So for their Rivian Adventure network, their charging infrastructure, they actually installed the first charger in Kansas on the RAN network. So it's nice to just see continued expansion. There's obviously so many areas that there's really not great charging infrastructure, especially if you're not part of the supercharger network. And to see that they're continuing to expand it is great. We also got on jumping, right into, RJ did a podcast recently, which is really worth listening to. Anyone who hasn't heard it should definitely check it out. It's called Charging Up the Electric Vehicle Market with RJ Scaringe of Rivian, and it's by I believe, How I Built This is the podcast name. In that podcast, one thing I'll just talking about the RAN network and charging infrastructure, RJ does say that Rivians will get access to the Tesla supercharger network in early 2024. So could have said mid-2024, could have said late 2024, but he used the word early, and we know Ford and GM, like we said, is going to get it in February. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw maybe even in March, as soon as March, I would think possibly Rivian getting access to that network through an adapter.
Something also worth mentioning, he talked about having Teslas and other non-Rivians charging on the RAN network, which is something that you tweeted a bunch, 2+ years ago, I remember you tweeting about. and it makes a lot of sense. Will help them to scale the brand network faster and quicker, and get it to be profitable. So that's all good news
for sure. And we know they're going to move eventually to NACS on their network as well. So that'll be interesting. Going over just some of the facts that the stock market is officially closed for the year. The S&P 500 ended the year up 23.5%. And what's extremely interesting is you would normally think of Rivian as obviously it's a volatile company, and there's a lot of uncertainty in things, when it comes to that stock. So you would think it would be if you guess the year-to-date performance from January 1st to the last stock trading day of 2023, you wouldn't think that it would match up with the S&P, but it turns out, interestingly enough, it had performed 23.6%, and the S&P at 23.57%, basically exactly the same as the S&P 500. Now, obviously, that's just an interesting fact.
For sure.
And I actually think that's a really bullish thing because Rivian obviously had come down significantly prior to that in the years past when it IPO'd at such a high price. It really came down huge. And since I think their trajectory is really getting to a place where it's more predictable, they're making huge improvements in their financials to get to positive gross margins. They've laid out a path to profitability. RJ even said in the podcast they have a clear path to profitability. We know they're going to have gross positive margins in the second half of 2024. I think with all that coming ahead and their continued progress, since it didn't outperform the S&P 500, I think it's leading to a really bullish 2024 for Rivian, where I think it's going to just significantly outperform it. But obviously time will tell, and this isn't financial, not financial advice. When it comes to the options I had and we discussed in the past podcasts, I am not as worried because I do have some news.
Yes.
I did buy an additional 20,000 shares on that account. So on that Robinhood account where there's the 30,000 shares with 300 calls sold against them, I did buy 20,000 more shares, pushing that account up to 50,000 shares, and that was actually bought on the last trading day of
And you closed
this year.
The puts, right?
And I closed, so I had puts that I had sold that I'd be willing to buy more shares if it got to $20 a share by February. They were up about 35% or so.
Just took
the money and said, let me just buy the shares now, even at $23 and change, because I am bullish about it. And I think they're going to do great on their production and delivery numbers, which we will get the first week of the new year.
Oh,
I mean, usually
awesome.
January 5th or so, somewhere around January 3rd to 5th, I think we're going to get the numbers. Probably Tesla will report maybe a little sooner, and then Rivian the next day. Usually that's how it's come out.
That's how it's been, yeah.
And I think that's going to be – I think they're going to beat – the expectation is 54,000 is what they guided to. Originally 50, then 52.
Then they raised it to
54.
They're probably going to be on the money with that.
I think they're going to beat it.
You think so?
I think we're going to get – not a crazy beat.
55
right?
or something.
I think they're – yeah, I think we're going to end up with I'm going 56.
Okay.
I'm going 56,000.
Let's see. All right, I'll go 55.
All right. So. And then getting into a little more of software news, we know we've talked heavily about how a huge advantage for Rivian and Tesla is over-the-air updates, software. They do hardware, they do software. They have the talent to do really good software. Ford basically had an issue recently. So we saw Tesla owners of Silicon Valley, Tesla owners SV on X, posted that legacy auto is going to collapse if a software update will brick their EV. And they showed a photo. Basically, a software update said, update not successful. And apparently the car was bricked. Like they could not drive the car. So even when there are issues with Tesla Rivian on software, usually the car is still drivable. It doesn't brick them, and then they re-release a new software to fix whatever the issue is. This is pretty bad.
I agree. That's not looking good for them. I'd be pretty scared if I was one of the software engineers over at Ford.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a pretty big problem.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to keep this podcast a little shorter than the past podcast, most likely, just because it's the new year. We're getting ready to meet up and celebrate getting into 2024 with friends. So we're going to end it with one thing I think that I want to see progress on from Rivian. Let's both just pick, I guess, one thing we want to see.
I will.
The thing I'm going to say, other than the obvious things I think most of us want, is I want to see their e-bike come out in 2024 or get announced with a maybe pre-order date. They have talked about the e-bike. I'm curious if it's still coming or if it got chopped off the block when they had to make some cost cuts. We know there was a secret team working on the e-bike. I even saw Galley made a video recently about on YouTube about the Rivian e-bike and is it coming? I'm curious if it's coming. I looked a little into the information about e-bikes. The market in 2030 for electric bicycles and e-mobility, but more specifically electric bicycles, is supposed to be a $35 billion market. The average e-bike is selling for around $2,000. Rivian's obviously a premium brand, so I could see them doing an e-bike anywhere from $1,800 to, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a $4,500 to $5,000 e-bike. But that said, I think $1,800 is probably gonna hit the masses.
That would sell a lot
more than if it was like $4,000. So I'm curious if the team is still working on it. Curious your opinions. Definitely comment below and let us know what you guys think.
I would say if for the e-bike, which by the way I just want to mention, you remember we were saying Tesla should do it
many years ago.
That was before Tesla even had its run up. But I think if they do it, it will be a exclusive product. It will be expensive. I wouldn't say it'd be 2,000. It'd probably be like 5,000, and for sure they would sell every single one they produce. That I guarantee. Something that is interesting from the RJ podcast. One of the things that he said that made me feel really good as a shareholder is that Rivian is currently in its least, exposed to the least risk that it has ever been exposed to. It's in the best position that it's ever been in with suppliers, with this, with that. So potentially this would be the time where they can do an experiment like this, which might, make them some extra money. So I think that's awesome, and I would love to see that. In terms of something that I would love to see Rivian working really hard on would be the service centers. They need to expand the service centers. That's a huge dial they can turn. Obviously, they don't need more demand right now, but because they are selling every car that they can produce. But in the future, if you buy a Rivian, you need to have somewhere to get it serviced, and it should be convenient and things like that. So major thing to watch for in 2024, news about new service centers opening up.
Yeah,
very exciting.
And as far as Dan was saying on Rivian being in the least risky position they were in, it's true. He basically, when he was asked about his feelings on Rivian and the risks and how he goes about it every day and fires the team up and everything like that, he really did say basically that he's never been in a better position. I mean, every single day, my dog has come to visit, but every single day the company is basically just better than it was in the past. It's every quarter by quarter things are just looking better, and there's a clear path to profitability, which is really exciting for the team and for the company. And when he was asked about the stock, he kind of did make a comment saying, it is kind of disappointing in a sense that it's not being valued the way he thinks it should be valued, implying, I think, that
it's undervalued.
That he believes the company's worth a lot more than it's currently trading for. And he said, he quoted Buffett in that podcast, mentioning that in the short term, the stock market's a voting machine, but in the long term, it's a weighing machine. And he thinks if they're heads down and keep focusing, and they basically just keep executing, that they'll basically be in a great position stock-wise and company-wise. Long-term, it will all work itself out. So everyone have a great new year.
Thanks for watching.
Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and like the video. If you haven't liked it, really helps the YouTube algorithm. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to
like,
share
subscribe,
it,
and all that
like
stuff.
It, whatever. Do it all.
Just do it.
We really
We're gonna make more
appreciate
of these.
it.
We're gonna get better and give you more better info, more often, all the time. Have a great New
Yeah.
Year's.